1, 2, 2, 3. So my first guest today is a sophomore jazz studies major, Paulo Santos. He's in jazz performance. He plays the saxophone and the flute, and he also does a lot of composing, both for small groups and big bands. So welcome today, Paulo.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, as you, most of you might remember, Paulo is in the UT Jazz Orchestra, and so the music that the arrangement that he did of the song 7 Steps to Heaven was written for the band that he's in, and that's one of the things that's really great about the UT Jazz program. So, Paulo, how did you first get interested in composing and arranging?
Well, composing came when I found myself in Professor John Fremgen's ensemble called AIM, which is a small group where we all compose original music. Just for this year, we have 7 people in the group, so we all compose small group music for that. That's where I really started diving into writing my own music and trying to actually get it played. And then arranging came from a class that I took with Professor John Mills, which was called studio arranging, where we learned how to write music for small groups and big bands. Was the final project, and that's where it kind of took off. You know, just finally learning the proper methods for voicing a saxophone section in a soli or something like that, or good ways to paraphrase melodies.
Right. Right. So AIM is playing next week, and a lot of you in the class are going to AIM next week. You get an email about that, so you're going to see Paulo there. I heard one of the pieces that he wrote for AIM last night, and it's very cool. So that's great. So you got going with that. You've been playing the saxophone and playing jazz for quite some time before you started composing. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
I played throughout high school. Yeah.
Right. So did you start improvising when you were in high school, like high school jazz band? Is that what did that, or what kind of brought you to improvisation to start with?
I started in middle school on flute, actually, and I played that all throughout high school. But then going into high school as a freshman, one of our family friends, who is a saxophone player, asked me if I wanted to start learning jazz and how to play. So, I mean, he lent me a saxophone, and I started learning. We started, reading solo transcriptions from the Charlie Parker Omni book and everything, just building vocabulary, and that kind of was the slow way into learning how to improvise and everything.
Okay, cool. Very cool. So this actual piece that we're going to be listening to is called 7 Steps to Heaven. And it was actually originally recorded by Miles Davis with essentially his second great quintet, although Wayne Shorter wasn't quite involved at that point. And you all have heard Miles Davis's second great quintet. So there is a small group version, a quintet version, that's kind of the classic version of this piece. So you adapted the piece. Your idea was to adapt the piece for the big band, right? So what were some of the reasons that you thought it would be a good piece for a big band to adapt?
Well, I had heard some previous recordings of different big band arrangements, and they're all of them are fantastic, but a lot of them, took the piece and arranged it, but didn't orchestrated it, but didn't really like arrange it in various different styles, and a lot of them stayed just within keeping a very similar like musical idea to the original recording. So I kind of wanted to take this tune that's been done fantastically a lot in this one way and sort of change it up and make it a little bit more different than some of the other arrangements that you had heard, right? Yeah, so by orchestrating, we're talking about the process of taking kind of existing music and just assigning it almost to different instruments. Right.
And a lot of the big band arrangements are like that. They would be very close to Miles Davis's recording, just the exact form, the exact intro, some solos, some backgrounds, just with more players maybe, right? Mm-hmm. But your arrangement goes further than that, right? Your idea was to do some other creative things to it that still captured the spirit of, or expanded maybe on the spirit of 7 Steps to Heaven. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I tried to, take elements of the original recording and incorporate that, but not, in exactly that manner. I mean, the intro is similar to the intro in the recording, but I did some phrase elongation, things like that.
Right. Phrase elongation means you stretched out some of the opening phrases, right? You made them longer, right? Yeah, so the original, I'm tied to so I can't go to the piano and play it, but it goes ba-doom bop, ba-doo bip, and then just over and over. But Paulo's goes ba-doo bop,
Uh-huh.
ba-doo bop, ba-doo dee, extension, extension, and there's some cool piano fills in that part, which is kind of like Herbie Hancock influence,
Hmm.
probably, right? Yeah. So that's one example, right? And then you also have some other sections in the arrangement that are like sort of takeoffs into different rhythmic feels. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I decided to put the bridge in a like a 12/8 Afro-Cuban style feel, which I just thought would be a cool different take on the tune rather than just keeping it all in the up-tempo swing that it is. And I tried to incorporate that into the last time through the full solo section, and then I also decided to sort of take that theme as sort of an homage to some of the other big band recordings of just general tunes I've heard, like WDR big band and like the 1 o'clock and everything, and just taking one idea and kind of moving away but keeping one little tie. So like I took the 12/8 theme from the bridge of the tune and then expanded on that and created a whole drum solo for that.
Over that whole section. Yeah, right, right. Cool. So there's a lot of interesting twists and turns and things that go on. All right. So please ask questions, anything that you heard that you'd like to ask Paulo. He will be back later in our show. And right now, we're going to watch the UT Jazz Orchestra playing Paulo Santos' arrangement of Seven Steps to Heaven. Here we go.